socializing. So leading the discussion, please once again welcome for the final time CNBC Senior Tech Correspondent, Mr. Arjun Kapil. Arjun, a big round of applause, please, and his lovely panelists. Big round of applause. Hi, Arjun.
Thank you very much. Right, here we go. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I want to introduce you to this wonderful panel we've got lined up here. We're going to be talking about all the buzzwords, Web3, NFTs, the Metaverse, and understanding where that's going. I just introduce the panel first. Start with Medha, Parlikar, the co-founder and CTO of CasperLabs. We've got Reeve here, co-founder of BLOCKv, and Justin Banon, co-founder of the Boson protocol. Guys, I just want to kick off with something a bit more macro though, because we're here in Davos. The blockchain and crypto community are out in force on the promenade against the backdrop of what has been a pretty big market crash in the space. So we've seen issues with Terra USD, the stablecoin that sent shockwaves through the market. So against this backdrop, what's happening? I'll start with you, Medha. What is, has this been damaging for your business and for the industry at large, or is it an opportunity?
Well, we're going to continue building as we always have in CasperLabs. We've seen these market crashes before in the broader ecosystem, and we see it as an opportunity to just double down and continue building out our ecosystem, bringing businesses online, continuing the process of educating businesses and individuals and developers about the technology. So for us, it's business as usual.
And you're obviously dealing with enterprise.
Yes,
a lot of the time.
enterprises and businesses.
You know, and businesses perhaps sometimes a bit more risk averse than the larger corporations. I mean, are they looking at this sort of now questioning some of the technology, or are they? What's your conversations like?
Well, they're really interested in NFT technology. Actually, they're interested more than tokenizing. They're using, they're avoiding any kind of notion that's going to get the ire of the SEC. So most of the businesses are not interested in tokenization unless it's loyalty tokens or other kind of incentive programs that do not have economic value attached to it. So they're really not affected by this downturn at all.
Reeve, what's your take on the situation?
Well, it's really interesting, that's for sure. It's unfortunate the money that was lost. However, it's not a surprise. It's an algorithmic-backed stablecoin, so it's just a bunch of smart people trying to figure out how to peg something to the dollar. And a lot of people pulled out their money in the last 2 months because they realized that it wasn't sustainable. So that crash kind of had a cascade effect, and it will probably be the end of most algo stablecoins. But from the industry at large, other than that wealth disappearing, I don't feel it's going to impact it that much because the underlying technology in the blockchain space is still very valid. It still is going to make transactions, make doing business around the world more efficient, and it's just getting better and better over time.
And Reeve, I guess you're the perfect person to talk about stablecoins very quickly. So probably the end of algorithmic stablecoins, but of course, as co-founder of Tether, we saw even Tether sort of lose its peg briefly during the rout. Do you think Tether's done enough to answer questions about stability in times of volatility?
Absolutely. There's two things that took place with Tether. One, the news reported that it lost its peg because on some exchanges, which are third-party sites, the price was at 95 cents. That's because there was a lot of supply on that exchange. However, that's not how Tether is designed. If you want to redeem it for $1, it's always been redeemable for exactly $1 at Tether.to. But these third-party exchanges have different prices. So it didn't lose its peg. And then as far as its stability, the best testament to that was last week. There's $10 to $15 billion in the last 2 weeks or so that have been withdrawn, and it was all withdrawn at $1. And so, I mean, I think that speaks for itself.
And just one more, I mean, there's been calls for Tether to be more transparent about what exactly it's in its reserves, what government paper they're holding, what corporate paper they're holding, etc., where it's come from, the yields, etc. Is that something you'd back?
Well, I can't really comment on that. Like the corporation is no longer involved, and I think they're doing their best to make sure that they are as above board and as clean as possible, and they have their reasons for what they're doing.
Justin, what's your take on what we've seen in the market and actually, what it means for what you're doing, but also the next sort of 12 months in the blockchain space?
I mean, my view is there's two kind of truths with crypto. One is the crypto assets are highly volatile. We just see, and they don't match the underlying value. They couldn't because they're wild. They've always swung wildly, right? So this is just another example of that. And secondly, you've got an exponential technology, well, an S-curve technology that's, climbing up its exponential. And so, I think we just need to take a longer term view. What we're building at Boson Protocol is Web3's commerce layer, and on top of that, applications that enable, for example, brands to sell physical items as NFTs. So really kind of infrastructure, core use cases. And we've not seen any kind of abating of that demand, and brands and consumers are continuing to adopt, and so we will continue to build through this.
Great, thanks for setting the scene, guys. So there's three, I think, big umbrella terms I want to get through in this chat in the next 25 minutes or so: NFTs, Metaverse, and sort of Web3, and how this all fits together. And why don't we kick off with NFTs, non-fungible tokens? Now, I suspect that most people in the room, having heard of NFTs, probably think about digital collectibles, pictures of apes going for astronomical sums of money, no doubt. But Medha, you're in an interesting position to talk to us about NFTs, but also as it relates to enterprise. How does that work? What are they doing? What are they demanding at this point?
Right. So I see NFTs as a way of representing the real world. Everything we touch, everything we work with every day is a non-fungible thing. Fungibility means you can break it into smaller pieces and exchange it, right? You can't really do that with most of the things you interact with in the real world. And similarly, for businesses, they're using NFTs to track a unique item, right? So we have a couple of use cases that are actually live at our mainnet already. One is for rare whiskey casks. So they were able to get greater price discovery, create a marketplace where they can buy, sell, and trade rare whiskey casks that have very specific storage and custodial requirements. And so they're able to mint the whiskey cask as an NFT and then trade and track and understand what the status of that rare whiskey cask is by looking at the NFT. Casper does support upgradable NFTs, so it's possible for those NFTs to go through a life cycle, which is really, really important for business. We also work with patents. Again, another unique thing that you want to buy, sell, and track, an NFT becomes a really great use case for that.
And Reeve, from your perspective, I mean, we've seen a crash in the NFT market as well. Prices come down significantly. But for you, where does the value in NFT lie sort of over the coming years?
Absolutely. It's been really interesting to watch the industry evolve. So we created the first ever NFT platform, started in 2015, did an ICO in 2017 called BLOCKv. And so we've been thinking about this problem for a long time. We never imagined that the first use case that would take off would be pure speculation around images or collectibles. We felt it would be a lot more utility around like tickets and coupons and loyalty and discounts and sweepstakes and things like that. But NFT 1.0 was this massive boom of speculation around the apes and all these things, which is great for the industry because it taught people to value digital objects, and it taught people to how to use a wallet and to get more wallets, because prior to NFTs, it was just purely financial transactions, so that's a smaller audience. Now we have a much wider audience, much more adoption. And where it's going to lead us, because you're right, we had this lots of frothiness, and now there's a bit of a crash. But where it's going to lead us is to utility. So back to what we thought, NFT 2.0 is going to be a lot of utility, and this frothiness paved the way because it educated users on how to use wallets. So it paved the way for Web 3.0. Because Web 3.0, you'll have a wallet, you'll go to all your different websites, and in those websites, they will give you NFTs and cryptocurrencies. And so now people will really cherish or place value on these digital objects, where in the past they didn't.
So for you, Reeve, you see sort of the utility side of it, the utility token side of it as being more sustainable than what we see with collectibles?
Well, collectibles will always have their place because digital collectibles are, in some instances, more interesting than the real world collectibles because they can be programmed to do things. But we've only scratched the surface on the use cases of NFTs. They're going to be highly programmable, and they're going to provide a lot of value to the user that holds them. More importantly, brands are going to lean into it because it's a way for a brand to connect on a one-to-one level with their consumer. And once they have that relationship, it's super valuable to the brand. In the past, the way brands would do it was through email. No one wants more spam, but people will now accept an object of value because there'll be something tangible to that digital object, meaning there'll be a discount, a coupon, or it'll be something that you don't care about, but since you can put it on an exchange and trade it with someone else, you still get value out of that interaction.
Justin, do you agree with that outlook?
Yeah, totally. I think we're seeing NFTs go from being basically images to becoming these programmable, standardized, interoperable objects. And so what we use NFTs for Boson Protocol is essentially like a redeemable NFT, something that contains game theory that manages a transaction between a buyer and a seller to exchange digital value for a physical item. Something that can be bundled and so represent a digital and a physical item. So you can have, for example, a phygital pair of sneakers which you can buy as an NFT with all of the transaction assurance all baked into sort of game theory, can be token gated, programmable, so you can program like loyalty and reward mechanics into these NFTs as well. So these are like intelligent objects, but because they're all in the same interoperable format, they can all talk to each other. And so I think increasingly echoing what your other guests were saying, NFTs are bridging between the real world and the metaverse.
Medha, as you hear this vision and what you said as well, as a consumerist, hearing you all describe it sounds quite daunting, sounds quite difficult. I'm going to get all these NFTs, I'm going to have to go and exchange and trade them. As a user, that might not be what I want to do. And it was interesting speaking to Gary Wood a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that he doesn't believe, sort of in terms of lots of different tokens will necessarily exist in terms on the crypto front in Web3, because users just don't want to be trading in and out of various different so-called cryptocurrencies to use whatever Web3 services look like. So just wondering what you think of that and whether you agree or disagree with that.
I don't disagree with Gavin in that. I don't believe that in order for a user to interact with Web3 that they need to buy a cryptocurrency token. In fact, I feel very strongly in that, so strongly that we're building infrastructure to allow for these applications to pay for themselves, right? Because it seems silly that I have to go to an exchange, get an address, get some token, and transfer it to my wallet, and then I can interact with the app, right? That workflow just doesn't work.
Yes.
It's not what we're used to, and if we're going to have broad-scale adoption, we can't use that. So I do agree with him in that, but I do think that there will be space for plenty of tokens, but I think that they will be invisible to the user, right? It's not going to be part of the everyday workflow. I feel like it will need to seamlessly integrate with the kind of subscription models that we are familiar with today.
Right. So if I'm using an app or subscribing to a service, it's just going to kind of be baked in. It's not something that I really actively have to.
That's what I see happening.
Yes. What about you? You something along that line?
Absolutely. It's easy to use is really key. A lot of you have been in the crypto space for a long time, and it's been the dead opposite of easy to use. It's extremely daunting, but over time, it gets much easier. If you tried to buy cryptocurrency in 2013, 14, it was extremely difficult, but now it's like signing up for an online bank account. It's going to be the same with wallets and NFTs. What's going to take place in the Web 3.0 world is you're going to log into these websites with your wallet. And so it's not buying currencies and trading them, it's just your identity is going to be attached to your wallet. You'll log in with your wallet, and then you'll be rewarded for the actions you take on that site, be it NFTs or different tokens that have value. And then you'll have this wallet filled with value that you get to interact with. So I think it will be much easier, especially for the younger generations that grow up purely digital, and they'll be so used to buying, selling, and trading these digital objects because it's fun for them, it's entertainment, and it's valuable.
Justin, I want to pick up with you on sort of NFTs, but how it also relates to this idea of the metaverse, and perhaps help our audience and those watching understand what we mean by metaverse, because it seems to mean something different to different people, different companies as well. And at this point, it's easy to argue that it's actually just more of a marketing term, buzzword, than actually something that has real business promise at this point. Where do you fall on this debate?
Well, I think we're at the early stages of a completely new interface for the web. And if you look at sort of Web 1, when e-commerce first arose, and for example, Amazon was doing e-commerce before it was probably viable on technology, and that's the time to start. Boson Protocol, we recently hosted Metaverse Fashion Week. There were about 70 brands. all selling digital, physical, digital items. And the opinion of most of these brands is, it was like the web, mobile, and now it's the metaverse. And so it's a must-have for them to get involved and start learning at this quite nascent stage, because the metaverse is going to be the place where this next generation of people congregate, buy, sell, and communicate and interact. So I don't think necessarily that the fact that it's early means that it's a marketing ploy. I think it's precisely the time to get involved. I mean, we had a fireside with Tommy Hilfiger himself, and he said, we're getting involved now because if we wait, we'll become irrelevant. And we need to build this capability in order to be winners and leaders in this new metaverse.
Can I just ask, how were users accessing the Metaverse Fashion Week? Was it through a headset?
No, because this was in Decentraland, so it was within a browser.
Okay. So there's a lot of talk about sort of, I guess, the interfaces really for Metaverse. Is it just going to be on our phones and tablets, or do you expect it to be headsets and?
Ideally, it'll be accessible to all. So your phone, your Mac, your PC, and then if you really want the full immersive experience, you can put a headset on. The way I see it unfolding, though, like Metaverse 1.0, it's not the Ready Player One. I don't even believe it's the Decentralands and Sandboxes. I think the way brands can best lean into it would be for each of them to have just an enhancement to their site. Because today their websites are two-dimensional. Wouldn't it be nice to have a three-dimensional site?
Yeah.
So you show up the website, you click come inside, and all of a sudden it becomes three-dimensional, more interactive, more engaging. You can walk in and talk to a salesperson. You can actually go shopping with your friends. So you can meet at Louis Vuitton website and browse all your bags with your best friend. That, to me, seems the natural first step, because we discuss with lots of brands and they don't know how to start. And the easiest way is just upgrade your website and then see where it goes.
A lot of the businesses I've spoken to here at Davos, they now have some sort of metaverse strategy, and I'm not always quite clear what they mean by it. But perhaps you can help enlighten us with the enterprises you're working with. When they talk about metaverse, what exactly do they want to achieve and do, and what are some of the sort of examples you're seeing at the moment?
It's very similar to what Reeve said, right? It is that they want their brands to reach out to that newer generation audience. And I actually see, like, the current interactions, you see people having their anonymous personalities or web identities. And I see the metaverse actually taking that two-dimensional flat identity and making it three-dimensional, right? So now your avatar, you can change your clothes in the avatar, you can wear different brands and have NFTs that your avatar owns and then trades them, as Reeve was saying. So that's what they're really looking for, is more stickiness, right? They're always trying to get deeper and longer engagement on their brands and their websites, and this is what they're really striving for with Metaverse.
And help us think the previous conversation we had on NFTs to the metaverse. What role would NFTs play in this sort of development of the metaverse?
Right, so for the brands, right, so imagine Nike comes out with these really new cool tennis shoes. Well, I can choose to own them in real life, but then I may get an NFT that I can use in the metaverse, and I can have my avatar wear these really cool tennis shoes in the metaverse, right? So the brands can actually cross over and gamify that, and then you can now sell and trade these NFTs inside the metaverse, right? And so even those NFTs wind up having value.
Yeah, and what about from a commerce perspective?
Well, the technology we've built, the Boson protocol, enables brands to actually sell physical items represented as redeemable NFTs within the metaverse. So these NFTs, can be programmed, traded and transferred like any other NFT. They can be bundled with digital wearables, and so it kind of bridges the gap between the real world and the metaverse, and enables things like these digital items that have a digital and physical component, which we are seeing this is an emerging norm. If you're going to buy a high-end luxury item, within a year from now, it will just be normal to get a digital NFT with a physical. And if you're going to spend like 10 grand on a digital handbag, well, it would be quite nice to get the physical too, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And is that just for sort of authenticity purposes? What would be the purpose of it? Because why wouldn't I just go and sell this? Why do I need the digital?
So, as as people are starting to exist in digital spaces more and more, the need to differentiate and identify yourself in a digital space is greater than the physical space, because you don't even have your, kind of natural physical differences. Everyone is this kind of vanilla avatar. And so being able to paint onto that blank canvas and express yourself is even more important in the metaverse. I think what we're seeing is the same trend that we see with humans, where we've all got these digital shadows. It's very unusual to meet someone who doesn't. Likewise, objects. Objects are increasingly going to have a digital component, which is that can be bought and sold, and the transfer of the physical happens as part of that digital trade.
Right, so we've done Metaverse, we've done NFTs, and I guess if we just zoom out a bit, we can talk about what this is all part of Web3. So again, it's a term that I found, depending on who I speak to, it depends on the way that they sort of define it. So Reeve, I'll kick off with you then. What for you, what is Web3? What does it mean, and how is it going to affect our lives?
I think it's the best natural evolution of the web that we've seen. It's the best manifestation of what we can do on the internet. And when you look at Facebook and Google and Apple, especially the developer platforms, and they take 30% and everybody complains. But then you're on Facebook, they take 100%. They monetize your data and you get nothing. And so Web 3.0 has finally provided developers and businesses the tools to allow the users to monetize their own actions. And so that goes back to logging in with your wallet, and then the actions that you take on that platform, you'll be rewarded for. And so the Facebooks of the future, the users will get most of the monetization out of it. They'll be able to make real money. And so when we look at the bear market of today, what I feel is going to take us out of it and really do the next bull run, it's a successful Web3 company. It's where an individual can say, I just made $100,000 doing X, Y, and Z on this site. Imagine if it's a studio in the box, or it's a music producer, it's a new artist, and he shows that he made $100,000 based on distributing his songs, and you got the same amount of streams as, say, Madonna did on Spotify, and she made $17. Something like that is going to take place, and then the Web3 will be upon us.
And Medha, from again, an enterprise perspective, Web3 is all supposed to be about decentralization, but companies, of course, like to keep things central for security, for IP protect, all sorts of reasons. So how are sort of corporations and enterprises approaching Web3?
They're approaching it, they're looking at the blockchain as a trust protocol, right? So they're looking for guarantees and being able to provide transparency to consumers and customers about track and trace for goods and services, as an example, to reduce compliance requirements, right? So if you put some information through a blockchain, you can trust the outcome of that information, right? You can make some assumptions around that it's tamper-proof. So this is how enterprises are definitely looking at it, from their dipping their toe in the water. The goal being is that ultimately consumers will benefit from new features, greater loyalty programs, greater transparency, and more trust.
And for you, Justin, I mean, what does it look like, Web3?
I think that the key difference with Web3 is that Web2, to quote Gavin Wood, is broken by design. It's a system that is designed to track consumers and businesses and brands and extract maximum value from them. It's you can go to business school and learn the theory, and I think Web3 is the opposite of that. It's designed to be fair, open, and equitable. And I think it becomes even more important. It's important, in social media and commerce platforms. But if you accept the thesis that we're going to be spending more and more time in these digital worlds, we cannot, as a species, afford to have those worlds owned by proprietary organizations like Facebook and essentially value farms. So we need open, fair, equitable systems in order that our children aren't kind of captured in the same way as we are with social media and current commerce.
We've got about 5 minutes left, but I think it's important also in these discussions to address the question of regulation, because that is something that will inevitably come. A few years ago at Davos, the last time, 2020 and then 2019 as well, the regulators were very anti-crypto. That was my sense of it. And I wanted to get a thought from you all on your conversations with regulators, because just over the weekend you had the head of the ECB, Christine Lagarde, still coming out saying, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are worthless. We've heard similar comments here on the ground as well from other business executives. On the other hand, the IMF head earlier this week was talking about how Terra USD was a pyramid, but that there's promise in some of these unstable coins in other areas of the market. So, Medha, I'll start with you. Have you seen a shift in the thinking from regulators towards the technologies you're working on?
I think they're definitely looking at the Terra Luna collapse as an opportunity to tighten down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing it as an opportunity to accelerate regulation and definitely look at regulating stable coins. So I think, from my perspective, it's a call to the crypto community that we need to take these kinds of attacks and what we're building seriously. And it's kind of a call to action for us to come together to make sure that what we're putting out to retail consumers is of high quality and responsible, because if we don't, we will be regulated, and we really don't want that, right? We should be a responsible consortium, a responsible community in terms of what we're putting out there in terms of products, goods, and services.
You need some regulation, right? You're mentioning, you're saying that you don't want to be sort of regulated, but
I think it's inevitable. It will be, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more it's time for us to kind of grow up and not be the Wild West, because if we are, then we will definitely see the hammer come down, and I don't think we want that.
And that's going to be bad for innovation and other things.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Reeve, where do you stand on this point of view? Because we know regulation is coming. But when you, like I said, when you've got regulators that are still sort of against some of these technologies, but some perhaps changing, have you seen a shift in the landscape at all in terms of thought?
Absolutely. They're leaning in more, and they actually want to be educated, because one, navigating the regulatory landscape is super complex. And plus, for the regulators to understand what they're regulating is very challenging for them. So they're leaning in, and they're actually seeking to be educated. And what I'm proud to see is a lot of people from our industry are leaning into them. A lot of people are actually trying to run for political office and make a difference, or there's groups put together to help educate the regulators so they don't over-regulate and stifle innovation. And so I think that's just kind of the best path forward, because we do need some regulation, but what does it look like? We'll have to find out.
And for you, Justin, what have your conversations been like? Has the mindset shifted?
I think there's a huge gulf, and I hate to say, the UK being a real sort of laggard, and I don't think Europe's much further ahead. And in contrast, I just came back from Singapore, and we had a number of meetings with sort of government agencies who are looking essentially to establish Singapore as this hub for Metaverse and Web3, etc. And of course, what you need is smart, effective regulation that protects consumers, but enables the benefits to be unlocked. And in certain regions, Singapore being one of them, you see that, and in others, I think we have fearful and ignorant regulation, which is just bad for the economy and everyone in general.
So what would you say to Ms. Christine Lagarde around her comments?
I would say get some advisors who understand what crypto is about and be informed, because the future economic prosperity of Europe depends on it.
And you?
Well, how can they say that Bitcoin and Ethereum is worthless? Look at what the technology has done to the world already. Look how many people are involved and how many lives it's changed. So I think that's an ignorant comment. She needs to dig a little deeper.
We've got about a minute left, so very quick one from all of you. The next 12 months, what do you expect is going to happen in your world? What are we going to see in terms of things being built and the market, your business? And I'll start with you.
Oh, well, our goal is to bring several projects live on mainnet, and we'll be releasing a lot of our DeFi infrastructure on Casper. So we're looking forward to continuing building and educating and growing the ecosystem.
Great, and you, Reeve, your outlook?
It's going to be great, because now it's time to innovate. The frothiness is gone, and since it's going to be a bear market, all those projects that weren't quite worthy are going to disappear, and the great ones are going to emerge, and hopefully we'll have a Web3 breakout.
And I'll end with you, Justin.
Well, we're launching V2 of Boson protocol at the end of the summer, which will be launched on Polygon, and it is going to enable scalability and all of the customers that are sort of coming coming over to be able to engage in Web3 commerce.
Oh, that was a roller coaster, a very, very fun roller coaster, guys. Thank you for taking all the questions, going through all the topics. I hope you all got a good insight into where we're going over the next 12 months, the next 12 years even as well in the world of Web3, the Metaverse and NFTs. Thank you all for your wonderful comments. Round of applause for our great panel.